Hi Ted, thanks for coming along today.
Yeah, no trouble.
You've been asked to come because you've been told that you need to learn more about your pelvic floor, and hopefully I'm going to help you with that today. The pelvic floor is a series of muscles that live underneath our body, from our sacrum at the back through to our pubic symphysis at the front. This is a diagram of our pelvis here. And the muscles come underneath us a little bit like a hammock, from front to back. They've got a couple of holes in them that allow the passage of feces and urine out of them. And the stronger our muscles, the more able we are to stay continent. And it should assist with performing a more solid base so that we can attain a better erection.
Yeah.
Now, the things that we need to know about the pelvic floor, other than the anatomy, is how best to recruit the muscles. How do we actually learn how to turn the muscles on and get the most out of our exercises? And that's certainly something that we'll go through today. What you'll go away with is an exercise program that you can do at home, that you'll be able to practice the pelvic floor exercises either before the operation and after as well. And you'll also have a really good sense of how to really effectively know that you're doing the exercises properly. We'll draw a few pictures as well, just to make sure that you really understand the fundamentals of why we're doing this. But like I say, at the end of it, you'll feel like you're in a much better place and know so much more about the pelvic floor than you already did. So we're going to look at things in a little bit more detail right now, and I'm going to draw a few pictures to hopefully illustrate things a little bit better. We've got two kidneys here, and they feed into a holding bay called the bladder, and the prostate sits just underneath that. The urethra comes through there, and the pelvic floor is like a sling of muscles just underneath the body. When that prostate is removed, this part of the bladder here can become weakened, and as the bladder fills with urine, it's very easy for that urine to then leak out. But thankfully we've got another muscle here in the pelvic floor, and if we can make that really strong, that can close that flow of urine pattern down, and we can stay dry for a lot longer. So we need strength. On top of that, if we look at a bigger picture, there's our pelvis, here's our spine, and here's our rib cage. And our core muscles lay over this structure by our abdominal muscles coming right the way around and attaching back to the spine there. Our diaphragm sitting over the top. And again our pelvic floor sitting underneath. And these form a cylinder. And they're our core muscles, and they function against gravity all day long. So they have to have good endurance, and that's the second word I want you to concentrate on. So we need both strength and endurance of our pelvic floor in order to have a good functional outcome. So those two words that we had to remember, one was strength, the other one was endurance. You remember those two words?
Yep.
These are the two programs that we're going to leave you with today. However, both of these programs depend very heavily on the right technique.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how long you spend at the gym to get big muscles. If you have bad technique, it doesn't how much time you spend trying to do the endurance exercises or how much time you trying to do the strength exercises. If the technique is poor, the outcome will be poor. And this is what we're going to focus on today, to make sure that your technique is as good as it possibly can be. So what we're going to look at today is how do we know that we're getting the best possible technique. And that's what we're going to look at with the real-time ultrasound in a minute. So now we've got you on the table, okay, and we're ultrasounding your bladder, which is just present on the screen at the moment. What we're going to teach you to do is to get the technique perfect today. And it's really important when we're practicing technique that you don't try too hard, okay? If you imagine that you're playing golf and you swing really hard at a ball, the odds of you hitting the ball really well are pretty low. But if you slow yourself down and focus on the actual technique, then you should be able to get a pretty good, nice swing action happening. And that's really what we're looking at right now. It's just a very gentle sense of recruitment. So now you're laying in this position, and the pelvic floor is actually now a pelvic wall. It's actually sitting more in this position here. What I want you to focus on is there's almost 3 parts to the pelvic floor. We can divide it into the back section, which is where your anus is. That little patch of skin between your testicles and your anus, which is that perineal zone, we'll call that the middle zone.
Yep.
And then the testicles and the penis at the front, and we'll call that the front bit. Okay? So we've got the back, the middle, and the front. Now, I'm going to get you to focus just on the back at the moment. And I want you to imagine that you're stopping yourself from breaking wind. Okay? So you just very gently imagine that you're, or even when you're on the toilet and your poo is moving down the tube, you're trying to suck it back up again. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
So very, very gently, I just want you to try and just suck it up and just lift and then let go. Great work, good. And what we see on the screen is that as you lift, we can see the pelvic floor lift at the same time, and that's perfect, that's really good. One of the biggest mistakes that I tend to see people make is a big strain effort, a bear down, okay? And we didn't feel that with you today, which is good. But certainly if you feel like you're making a sudden, quick turn on, it's probably the wrong technique.
Yep.
So very gently again, just work on lifting from your back passage, that's good, and hold, and then let go again, and relax, and good. And again, when we let go, we see the pelvic floor drop back down again.
Yep.
This time what I want you to do is to work on your breathing pattern as well. And what I've noticed is that as you do that, you really stop breathing. And it's kind of like you can remember to do one thing, but you forget to do something else. And it's kind of like rubbing your head and patting your tummy at the same time. You just got to learn that technique.
Yep.
So this time we're going to try and take 3 normal breaths. So just from the back passage, draw up from the back passage. That's good. Breathe. 1 breath. 2 breaths, keep it up there, good. Even breaths. 3 breaths, keep it up there, good. And then let go and relax. That's great, that's good, well done. Now we're going to move slightly around the corner. We're going to think about that middle section. And you know that sensation is when you walk into cold water and you kind of don't want your bits to kind of go into that cold water, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that you're drawing them straight up towards the top of your head. Almost a vertical lift, or in this position, a horizontal lift. So just have a go at that for me, just from that middle bit, good. And then let go. Brilliant. And the same rules apply. We're going to look at trying to work on making sure you don't strain and bear down, but that you can take 3 breaths. So have a go at a clearly defined lift. So what I'm going to get you to do is just to contract. That's good, good lift. 1 breath. 2 breaths, and 3 breaths, and then let go. Great work. Now again around the corner to the front, and this one's the easiest one. This is imagine that you're stopping yourself from urinating in midstream. Okay, and if you can't do it right now, that's okay. Just have a practice every now and again when you are going to the toilet. Just practice just stopping yourself and getting the feel of where that's coming from, and then you can practice it in this position. So have another go for me now from the front. Just draw in and lift. Take 3 breaths. There's 1 breath. 2 breaths. Keep it sustained. 3 breaths. And then drop it down and relax. Great work. And now we're going to try all 3 from 3 breaths. Okay, so don't try any harder, but just try from the back, the middle and the front all together. So lift. There's 1 breath. 2 breaths. Good. 3 breaths. And again relax and let go. Great work. Good. Remember during all of those to make sure that your legs stay nice and relaxed, and it's fine if you want to stick pillows underneath there or put your feet up on the sofa or do whatever you have to do, but just make sure that your legs stay nice and relaxed at the same time. So just to recap, the back, the middle, the front, and then all 3 together. All distinctly different kinds of feels for the same contraction.
Yep.
And that will help us to learn the best technique possible because we're looking at it from lots of different angles. That was great work, well done. So now we've spoken to Ted and we know that he's happy with being able to recruit the right muscles in the right way. The next stage of his rehabilitation process is to focus on improving both the strength and the endurance of his pelvic floor. If we look specifically at the endurance component first of all, it's really important that he is able to isolate his pelvic floor in combination with his core muscles to produce a long, slow, tonic hold of his pelvic floor over a long period of time. By repeating this at regular intervals throughout the day, he's going to improve his pelvic floor endurance. The first stage of this is learning how to contract your abdominal muscles. And so we're going to look at the real-time ultrasound image of someone as they contract their abdominal muscles, and I want you to try and learn how that feels for you. Of course, you're not going to be able to see that at home, but I hope that by practicing the cues that we teach you, you're going to be able to develop this skill going forwards. So what we're looking at here is an image on the screen of the real-time ultrasound machine viewing across through the abdominal wall. This first layer here is the skin and fat layer, and then there's the first muscle layer, external abdominal oblique, followed by the internal abdominal oblique, and then transversus abdominis. This is part of our core muscle structure down below here. You can see how transversus comes to a point at the corner here. I'm going to get Ted just to very gently, imagine that you're trying to draw your tummy towards your spine ever so gently and engage your pelvic floor at the same time. And you can see how the lower muscle fattens and thickens and slides towards the left side of the screen. Now breathe normally, good. And then gently relax again. And we see it become thin and go back to normal. Just show you one more time. Draw on towards your spine. Good. And then relax. And well done. In order to focus on how to more accurately contract the abdominal muscles, I want you to think about gently trying to draw your stomach towards your spine. Imagine that you're trying to do up a tight pair of trousers and you can't quite get the top button done up. The impression that I want you to get is that you're trying to make yourself feel slimmer by drawing your tummy towards your spine whilst maintaining again a normal respiratory pattern. If you can achieve that and breathe normally, then you're on the right tracks. Once we've learnt how to effectively isolate the abdominal muscles, we know for a fact that the pelvic floor muscles lift in accordance with an increase in tension in the abdominal muscles. So of course, if we can work the abdominal muscles, the pelvic floor ones are going to come along for the ride. Now if we can teach you a good postural position to sit and stand and walk, you can integrate the abdominal feel of that lift and function the pelvic floor exercises at the same time for progressively longer periods throughout the day. And we'll show you how to achieve those neutral postural positions next. So in order to work on the endurance component, we're now going to show you how to find a neutral position in sitting. The first stage is to sit nice and evenly on your seat bones. Imagine that your pelvis is like a bowl of water. We don't want to spill too much water out the back of the bowl, but neither do we want to spill too much water out the front of the bowl. Trying to find a level position is really an important place to start. Once you're happy that you're in a neutral position from down there, think about lifting through your rib cage and imagining a big helium balloon coming off the top of your head, stretching your neck, but maintaining a position where your forehead and chin are perfectly in a line, one over the top of the other. Once in that position, you can draw your tummy towards your spine as you've just learned how to do, and again maintain that normal respiratory pattern as previously. The concept is that if you're sitting in a bad position, the pelvic floor tone is low. If you're sitting in a good position with your abdominal muscles turned on, the pelvic floor tone is much higher. And the higher we keep the pelvic floor over a longer period of time, the much better the endurance is going to be in the long term. So now we're going to talk about neutral standing and how to find a neutral position in standing. The better your template is, the more chance you have of achieving a more neutral position more often. Firstly, start with your feet nice and evenly spread apart. Make sure that 50% of weight is on each foot. Soften your knees ever so slightly so that you're not standing so rigidly. Once in that position, again, get the feel for this bowl of water. Make sure that you're not tucking your pelvis under too far and spilling it out the back of the bowl, nor are you sticking your bottom out behind you. Once you've found that neutral position, again, lift through your rib cage, lengthen through the back of your neck as if a big helium balloon is coming off the top of your head, and then draw your tummy towards your spine and breathe normally, just like we did when we were practicing on the real-time ultrasound. The more you can sustain that position, the more the pelvic floor is coming along for the ride, and the better the endurance will be in the long term. Again, with sitting, you're either standing badly or you're standing with good pelvic tone, so make sure you choose the latter. When we're doing the postural exercises, it's really important that we extend the length of time that we do them for. We can't run a marathon by running a single kilometre every single day. So you need to be aware of your body's position more frequently through the day. I'd recommend that every hour you make yourself aware of where you are in space and make a conscious decision to make a change. Remember, every change you make for the positive is going to mean that your pelvic floor muscles are improving their endurance in the long term. So now we've discussed about the endurance and the technique components of the exercise program, and what you'll have noticed is that there is a real lack of effort involved with the contractions. The contractions have all been about 10 to 15% of a maximum voluntary contraction, but sustainable over longer and longer periods of time. The final component of the exercise program is to focus on strength, and as we all know, strength is about trying really hard to develop that extra hypertrophy of the muscle fibres sufficient enough to generate more power going forwards. In order to do these exercises properly, it's important that the technique is really good. So if you're still not happy with the technique, or you feel like you're not isolating the muscles properly, then don't go down this track at the moment. Keep trying the technique until you feel that you can really achieve it well. With the strength exercises, you can imagine you're going up in a lift. You're going to start at the ground floor, and you're going to lift your pelvic floor gently from all three zones up to that level 1 contraction. From there, you're going to then try really hard and go up towards 100% effort at the back passage, and then relax down again. All the way up to the level 1 again with all three muscles, and then up to level 2, which is 100% effort from the mid zone, and right the way down. And then again, all three levels up to level 1, and then push really hard from your posterior passage, and then relax all the way down. We're going to repeat that twice, and that's going to become our strength exercises. So they're not really that different from the technique exercises at all. The big difference is the amount of effort that we put in. And because we've put in a high amount of effort, we only need to keep the number of repetitions relatively low. So I'm going to say that you need to do 6 contractions, and that should be fine. We're going to do some in sitting, some in standing, and some in lying, just in the same way that we did with the technique exercises. But once again, it's the effort that's really high during these exercises. When we're doing the strength exercises, it's really important that we put 100% effort in. And as a result of that, you may find that the day after those exercises, when you try and do a maximal effort, you don't feel like you're pushing to the maximum capacity that the muscle has to offer. Under these situations, it's really important that you give yourself at least a good rest day off. Now on that rest day, you can go back to your technique exercises and practice those. So on the whole, I think it's probably beneficial that you do a day on, day off technique, where one day you do the technique and one day you're looking at strength exercises. And try that for a little while going forwards. Another good thing to try when you're doing the strength exercises is that at the very end of that lift, once you've got as high as you can possibly get, just to hold your breath at that point and push down ever so slightly. New research has shown that as you bear down, the effort increases from the pelvic floor. So it's worthwhile at the end of each lift to try and bear down ever so slightly just at the end of that contraction to get the most out of the strength exercises. Today I'm going to give you a DVD to go away with that pretty much covers everything that we've done today. On the very back of that DVD there are also some other functional exercises that you can do. Now functional exercises involve normal everyday activities, going up and down stairs, jumping up and down, those kind of normal activities which you can incorporate into everyday life. They'll be at the back of the DVD, so just have a look through those and do whichever ones you feel that you need to do. The important thing with those activities after the operation is that you only undertake them if you feel that they're encouraging you to stay dry. If you do the exercises and you feel that you're just wetting the pad through, it means that you're not quite ready for those exercises at this stage in time. Just wait, be patient, keep practicing the basic exercises that we've gone through today, and what you should find is that as you ramp it up, you should find that you stay dry during those exercises, and that's really what we want to encourage going forward. So hopefully now you should have a very much a better sense of awareness of where your pelvic floor is, how to contract it effectively without cheating, and that's really what I want you to go away with today, feeling. If you don't feel that way, my door's always open, you can come back and learn it, but get the technique right first of all before you build anything on top of it. Remember that diagram that we drew with technique as the foundation stones of this glass, and if you don't have that stem of the glass itself is pretty useless. Down the track we can look at functional exercises of how to interact with normal exercises of everyday life, and I'm sure we'll go through those when the time's right down the track. But for now, what's really important is that you're really happy with the quality of contraction that you've achieved.